And I'm Janel, and welcome to Cocktails and Compliance. This is episode 15, right? And we are live from ResMania. So thank you for being here with us. We are super excited to have some special guests with us today. We have Cecilia Cossio, who is the president of Marquis Asset Management. Cecilia is a back-to-back guest speaker, by the way. So, yay. And we also have Jennifer Wood, who is vice president of the John Stewart Company. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here. And I think you have the distinction of being the only three-peat guest.
Oh, that's right.
Wow.
That's
I get
right.
a special jacket for that.
You may have an extra drink.
Oh,
So we'll get you something. Yeah.
Ooh, we should get her a Blue Roy jacket or something.
We'll get you something. We'll get you a resin pen. We'll hook you up with resin swag. It'll be awesome. So it would not be Cocktails and Compliance without a cocktail. So sticking with our Hollywood theme, we present the red carpet cocktail. So I don't even know what's in it. Just read the stuff. We were like, they're like, do you want something? We're like, yes, just yes. So cheers, everyone. Cheers. Cheers, Rue. Somebody has to clink your glass in front of Rue's mic because we always gives
here.
little cheers. Clink. Good job.
It's vodka and fruity stuff.
Oh,
So
I heard the front row go, ooh.
I hope it's good.
All right. Well, we need a drinking game for today.
Man, I am so sick of that word. I can't even.
Drinking?
Hotma.
Oh, no, it won't be that. It doesn't have to be that. At the last one, affordable was the drink of the day, the game of the day. And that got a little dangerous pretty quick. But, you know, it's the end of the day. We did brunch the last time. So I'm good with it being affordable. It can be, y'all can go out with a bang today. It'll be fun. You know what else we don't have? We have these two guest speakers. You know what we don't have this time?
What?
Police. We had to have.
Oh, yeah. That's right. We had to have a police officer.
We did. That was special. That was a first. But anyway, so I know you said you're tired of Hotma, but we kind of have to talk about it for a minute because we always talk about it. So I know you guys may be Hotma'd out. At the last one, someone called it what? The Hot Mama Mess, I think.
Yeah.
She was supposed to send us T-shirts too. I hadn't seen that yet. Anyway, the Hot Mama Mess. So not to belabor it, hopefully you guys went to Jenny's session and you went to Scott Michael's session because we purposely said, let's focus on HUD requirements and then talking about tax credits. And Scott Michael, I know yours was really good because somebody that I sent to yours walked out and went, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I have so much to do. So good job. But the one thing that I did want to talk about is advocacy work about Hotma because we're now at that point. We've talked about it so long. We are so close,
But we're never going to get there.
right. We kind of feel like the timeline is like this now to finish a spec, get this coded, get it tested, get it out, finish your training, do all the things. And Jennifer, I know you brought this up, that you have been involved in some advocacy work with Hotma. Can you tell us about it?
Absolutely. So I work primarily in affordable housing and that's where
All
right, should I switch then? I work primarily in affordable housing. Again, in a very unaffordable location.
Oh, that's close enough. Go, everybody go.
It's hyphenated, right? Yeah. So I work only in California. My company's based in San Francisco.
You get a drink for that. Just
Thank you.
there you go. Look, you guys don't have a problem. All of you who are in Texas, just be happy. Be happy. She's gonna scare you. You'll never work in California after this. But keep going.
I love it there, but it is a real challenge. So in the more expensive areas, we have many layers of funding. New deals sometimes have as many as 15 layers of funding. Most properties have 7 or 8. And what does that mean? How does that relate to Hotma? Well, what it means is that everyone who thinks they know how to solve the affordable housing crisis, yes, I said it again.
Oh, dang.
Everyone who thinks they know how to solve the crisis is putting their own requirements on us with regard to income calculations, you know, how we determine the value of an asset, what type of documentation is reasonable. So we're not just having to follow HUD and tax credit rules. but we have to deal with local funders. And some of our local funders think they know so much that they have actually created their own passbook rates. We're, having to create multiple certs basically for the same households because of the different layers on their units. And so when we saw HOTMA coming, we saw a need for advocacy. We decided that as an operator, we need to get in front of all the funders and those who are monitoring us before they made their decisions on how they were going to implement HOTMA or if they were just going to ignore it. And so we got together with all of our colleagues at our local AMA, our chapter of the Affordable Housing Management Association. We got them all on board. We put together an advocacy letter asking the agencies to implement the HOTMA policies the exact same way our tax credit state agency was implementing it, so that we would be able to all follow the same roadmap. And I can't say that we've been successful yet because everyone hasn't made their decisions, but we are in the process of sending out our letter to targeted individuals at every local funding agency. So that's all of our cities, counties in the state of California. It's a big task, but we think it's really worth it.
Jennifer, I probably would think that it's not just in California where it would be beneficial. Like, I'm sure cities like Chicago and New York and the larger metro areas
For sure.
probably also have like several funding sources that they would kind of like to have everybody act the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond that as well. I mean, just in the multifamily industry, we need to be involved. We need to be out there, not just in the affordable realm, but in every aspect of multifamily. Get involved locally. It starts there. And guys, what you say matters. Your vote counts. I'm not going for any direction, any side, whatever it means. Whatever's important to you, get your people out there. Let them know. Get out there and make a change. See heard.
Yep. And one of the things we talked about too, we always talk about, succession planning and what does this look like, for how do you bring staff in? How do you keep staff? And we talked about the added complexity. So it's hard enough, and you have to think about what does that mean for your staff, right? You need somebody who has a heart for affordable. I said it. I worked that in there. All right. So you need someone who has a heart for the market, but you also have to reduce the complexity because, it's just such a burden on staff with everything else that they're dealing with as well. So, well, I'm sorry. What is happening? Wow.
Is our audience
We just went on Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Hey, Janelle, I want to add something. So
Are you going to say affordable too to make me, okay.
if you want
you
to,
just
I
said
will.
it again.
Say it again.
I think you can probably do it yourself. So, yeah, I just wanted to offer that for many of you, if you're based here in Texas, my guess is you might be with a regional management company working in multiple states. So maybe your advocacy is with your multiple state agencies.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a bunch of local sources that you have to advocate with, maybe it's trying to get your states to be aligned just to make the job of your people easier.
Yeah. How many of you here on site? Nobody here's on site. How many of you are at corporate? I'm assuming everybody. Okay. Just I wonder, like, for me, it's trying to get my site people out here, get them into the rooms where they can get some education and feel like they're part of the solution. It goes back to the basics of your site teams matter and getting them out there, making them feel like their voice counts outside of the company. Teach them and educate them how important that is.
Yeah, for sure. All right, switching gears from HOTMA, the Renter's Bill of Rights. So we talked about it this morning. If you were in Larry Key's session this afternoon, Larry talked about it a little bit as well. So I think the biggest thing, because we've been talking about Renter's Bill of Rights for some time, really I think where we're more concerned on the affordable side is all the changes in the screening. Oh, shoot, I said it again. My bad. Wow. Okay. We have extras if, I keep saying that word.
Might have to carry me off the stage here.
I know. We'll just wait till everybody's out, and then we'll. They don't have to watch us walk down the steps. It'll be fine. Okay. So what we're concerned about is screening criteria and the changes to that. I don't know if you guys have been reading the guidance or proposed guidance that's been coming out, but it's going to be interesting to see what new methods are going to be used to evaluate applicants given new restrictions. So, and Jennifer, because you live in an area where you have extra restrictions.
Yeah, so a lot of our markets, Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco, LA, they have very strict renter protections, and some of them don't allow us to screen for much of anything. In Oakland, you cannot ask about criminal history. You cannot put it on the application. You cannot run a background check for criminal history, and you cannot deny for criminal history. And so other forms of verification or other tests become important. And I understand why things are going this direction. After the war on drugs, mass incarceration, disparate impact, all of these things have sort of led us to where we are now, and the pendulum's kind of swinging the other way. And what we're seeing in all of those cities is lots of renter protections that prohibit screening, a lot of proposed bills that would prohibit using credit scores or using credit checks at all. So I think that the trend that we're really expecting to see is a switch back to sort of less sophisticated data-driven decisions, like going back to landlord references, and focusing more on fraud detection, which is, of course, data-driven. But fraud detection is going to be outside of running credit checks and background checks in terms of how it gets interpreted by the courts and by the advocates and local politicians.
Yeah. And Cecilia, I remember when we talked about this, you said you're not using credit scores.
We're not using credit scores. We are using a third-party servicer who then determines there's a scoring system, but we're an affordable.
Drink.
How many of our residents have, and guys, I'm not putting everybody in a box, but the reality of it is they have challenges paying the rent. They have challenges paying their credit cards. They have challenges paying their car payments. Like if we use a credit score, our occupancy is not going to be very high. So use things that matter. Use a rental history. But now I want to kind of switch gears here a little bit because we also talk about AI. I know everybody's sick of AI, right? But when I've been reading up on this, we talk about AI and how it's going to determine this and determine that. But here's the bottom line is consistency, training. I mean, what else do we do? We've got a person that has to look at the information. We can't let the computers make the final decision. The Disparate Act, they had the right to come through and say, hey, I'm appealing this. We look at that information. We ask questions. If you have a TSP plan or rental criteria plan, whatever it is that you have on your properties, if you teach your people to be consistent in how they apply it, I don't know how many people approve on site, but pay attention to those and measure those based on what your staff is doing and what they're putting out there. And you'll find inconsistencies that then you can fill in the gaps. But it comes down to the training that we give our people and their understanding, meeting our team members where they're at and bringing them to where they need to be. It's really important that we do that through this process because it's confusing for them. They've got hot collections, rental applications, get it full, do the evictions, go right, go left, go up, go down. I know, I do it. So how can we provide them systems and solutions to be better at what they do and really be in their greatness each and every day, because that's what it's about, is inspiring them to do better, because they're the ones out there in the field.
I was surprised to hear you say, too, that you guys have requested resident ledgers.
Oh, yeah. So in some locations where we can't utilize credit history and we also can't consider criminal history, we have clients. We're a fee management company as well as a owner management company. We have some clients who require us to obtain the resident ledger for the last known residents of our applicants. And that is how we determine whether or not they have a history of paying on time and paying in full. Something we didn't talk about, and I can't remember if it's on your notes or
Are you cheating off my paper?
I am.
Okay.
I am looking at your desk. So I cannot tell a lie. I don't know if we were going to talk about HUD's proposed rule, their proposed rule on eliminating reducing barriers to their programs, to admissions to their programs. And I think that for folks who don't work with HUD directly, they probably maybe don't see this as meaning anything to them, but it's the beginning of a trend. And so the federal government is, they are considering changing how they implement and enforce rules around applicant screening for HUD programs. And that's not just subsidized, well, it is subsidized programs at this time, but I really believe that if this happens, that it will transcend and it will become something that is required by state agencies for tax credit properties, and it might end up becoming legislation in states as a renter protection. So there is a proposed rule right now that would basically require landlords to do an individualized assessment of every person with any kind of criminal history on their record. Like there would be no more safe harbors, like you can automatically deny for X kind of past history. And so I think it's really important that folks get ahead of that policy legislation, or that proposed policy, take a look at the proposed rule, because landlords can submit comments right now up until June 10th. And your comments do really matter. They do make a difference in the outcome of how that policy is written.
Your comments and your site team comments. And I keep going back to that because there's more of them than of us. So help us make a difference by educating them that their voice matters.
Yep, for sure. And it's interesting because we talked about fraud earlier today as well. And I know it came up in the customer panel yesterday that was something that there was a big concern about that. And again, one of the things I found really interesting about the ledger is you said it's harder to falsify that. So, another good way to prevent fraud by asking for that document.
Yeah, it is harder to falsify a ledger. It's easy to falsify a landlord reference. Mm-hmm. And as we all know, if you still receive I was going to say faxed. I don't think anyone has a fax machine anymore. But if you,
I'm waiting till a quizzical look where someone goes, "What's that?"
You still receive forms to fill out with the consent signed by the applicant. You're probably very reluctant to give information on those forms. I mean, there's so much risk involved with sharing information, whereas requiring the applicant to produce their ledger, sort of protects that landlord who's disclosing information. It's a little more sterile and not so subjective.
Agreed. You mentioned too, and I don't know if this is specific to California or not, when you were talking about criminal charges, you were saying, what can you use? And then you talked about appeals that people can file. And how much time, how that's adding time to the application process overall.
Right. This is something you want to advocate around with local funders or new funders, because a lot of good intentions result in terrible unintended consequences, like great long periods of vacancy while people are literally living on the street outside your building. So, an appeal process of 10 days or 15 days, and you cannot move forward with any other applicant while you're waiting for that's problematic. So
is HUD going to fix that with special claims?
No, probably not.
Extended vacancy?
Probably not. I mean, HUD special claims only covers 80% of the first 60 days. So
I know.
It could take longer than 60 days. It might take months in some cases.
Well, and the other thing is talking about getting away from actually scoring product, whatever it may be, then you've got the human factor in it, right? And maybe I'm sitting here having a conversation with somebody and I'm like, dang, they're really nice. I am going to go ahead and make a decision based on something like that. That's it. We spent years training people not to do those things, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. So the way that we're working in that situation is that we ask for mitigating circumstances up front. So we're asking people at the point of application for mitigating information and circumstances. So we basically can perform an individualized assessment before we even get a record back. And of course, that's only in the places where we're allowed to screen.
I was going to say that's a lot of work up front that I don't know that the site teams currently do.
It feels scary.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many things that could y'all in trouble.
Right. Think about it like reasonable accommodations. So there was a time when you never would have made a decision the way we handle reasonable accommodations, where you consider, whether there's a nexus between their disability and their need, and you evaluate whether it's administratively burdensome or whether property can actually afford it. There's so many variables involved in that. And so it's kind of like that. It's like taking away our really simple checklist and criteria and replacing it with something more like that involves more thinking.
Who wants to go to California?
Wow. Anybody want to place bets on how long she stays?
Hey now.
Maybe not just say who wants
I know.
to manage your low-income properties in California. That may be something different, right?
Yeah. You know what, Jennifer, is job security, right?
It's a meaningful endeavor.
It is very much so. It is. One of the things that we talked about too, you think about this process and documents, and again, back to California, or any place where you have a large homeless population. How are you getting those documents from them? I mean, your goal is to house them, but then they have to go through all the hoops to get through the process.
It's not easy, but we do work with a lot of service providers who work with the applicants where they are. So they go to the shelters, or they go to them at a social service location or at a soup kitchen or a place of that nature, and they work with applicants to help them get the things that they need. They help them navigate, getting a copy of their social security card. It's a lot of social service provider involvement. We do manage quite a bit of permanent supportive housing, and so we have full-time service staff on site, as well as sometimes multiple agencies that are providing supportive services.
Awesome. All right. Well, switching gears. One of the things we mentioned earlier this morning, we didn't really get a chance to get into detail, was workforce housing. And so we're starting to see more and more workforce housing. And as we were talking about it, what we found that it may mean something different depending on the community that you're in. So anyone here working in workforce housing, dealing with that?
Missing middle.
One. All right. So we talked about this too with, tax reform and waiting to see kind of how that impacts this. But I know you and I, Rue, have talked about this, that you're seeing more of a focus on workforce housing and that missing middle, with the intent is to serve, we talk about the extremely low at the 30%, and you talk about tax credits, at the 50%, the 60%. You think about even average income tests going, all right, well, let's get from that 30 to 80%. Well, what happens with those people who are at that 80% or maybe a little bit higher, right? So if you think about your firefighters, your policemen, your hospital workers, people that are essential workers, you want them to be able to work in that community where they serve, right? Because if they have to move further out, odds are you're going to lose out on some of those essential workers. So it was interesting to me that when we were talking about this missing middle, and we said, well, what is it? What's that percentage? And you two had different answers on what that looked like based on your region.
I think for me, I go a couple of different directions, because it's not just about affordable. It's about our different asset classes out there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Iggy's keeping us on. I heard her.
Yeah, she said they're affordable. I said affordable 3 times. It's those C-class properties that have those working people out there that aren't making. In Dallas, your area median income is $80,000. Well, can you tell me that somebody at Chick-fil-A or CVS or Target is making $80,000, and they have a family of 3 or 4 at home, and they need a 2 or 3 bedroom? That's $1,800 to $2,500 a month. I mean, they can't afford it. So yes, I get a little passionate about this. Like, I can imagine. I take my jacket off in a minute, but it's because we've got to think about everybody out there. And guys, when you're walking up to a child who is, on one of my C-class properties, and they're hungry, or their parents ain't home because their parents are working, like, what can we do as a community to get the word out there, to let people know it's not just about our affordable programs. It's about our regular non-affordable sites out there, those that aren't under even stricter regulations, but still require the assistance for these children that come home after school and need a little bit of attention. I can get into this big old soapbox, and I won't do that here, but my heart feels for them, because they matter too, but nobody's paying attention to them. Then let's talk about the teachers, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. And you tell me that they can afford a $3,000, $4,000 a month apartment. No, they cannot. Guys, this is where we have to get out there and make a difference and talk to our local representatives. It starts at home. So, and again, I say, our site teams are much larger volume than us at corporate. So let's educate them. Let's teach them. Let's tell them their vote matters, what they think, what they say, how they feel matters. And can your leasing agent afford a $3,000 or $4,000 apartment? These people work for us. That hits home a little bit.
Well, I was surprised to hear Jennifer talked about properties that she has in San Francisco. And so when I think the missing middle, I've heard 80 to 100%, up to 120%. And Jennifer said, well, no, it's up to, you said 150%.
Yeah. So, I mean, truth be told, I don't know of any properties that are serving that population. But what I know is that in my city, if you make that much money, you still probably can't afford to live in my city. I mean, and that's shocking, right? And it's no good. It doesn't make for a healthy city. Everyone who is needed as part of that society to work in that city should be able to live in that city. So if you're a police officer, if you're a teacher, if you're a therapist, if you're a social worker who's serving the homeless, you should be able to live in that city. You shouldn't have to drive 2 hours to another city in order to afford to live. So I see this as a trend. I do see that there is a lot of movement towards workforce housing. The tax credit income averaging was a big step. It's just the beginning. To take it to 80%. We do have some properties now where we're serving people up to 120% of AMI. We have had to do really creative things in order to do that. With tax credits, we've had to basically take a building, use air rights parcels and a condo structure to carve out parts of the building for people at 100% of AMI, 110 and 120, so that those units aren't in the tax credit building. It's the only property I know of where it's been done, but I'm sure someone else had the idea too, but that's what it took. I do see, though, more funding opportunities happening in expensive cities for workforce housing. We've got some properties in the pipeline that are going to serve folks up to 110% of AMI. So I'm hopeful that we're moving in that direction. But all of the cities that saw their rents climb steeply during COVID because people relocated to your more affordable area, it's a bit of a cautionary tale, right? Because, and I don't know what's happening right now in your cities, but if your demand for housing is going up, you need to be thinking about this before you price out these folks out of your community.
As owners, though, we also understand we have to make a profit. And that's where you have to find the balance, right? It's affordable housing and it's owners who can provide and keep up with the assets. So there is a real balance that we are constantly working on to make sure that those needs are met on both sides. As an operator, as an investor, this is something that I'm constantly looking at. How can I make this work on both angles?
Hey, Stacy has a question.
So I just wanted to make the comment, I have been seeing other local programs that are clearly at that 80 to 120%. But what I'm finding is the issue is that to get the deals done, the developers are putting multiple layers on with it. And so even though they have those layers at 80 and 120, it ends up getting capped by whatever is the most restrictive. And so even though the intent was there, it's still not serving who it's meant to because it has something else that, capped it at 60 or capped it at 30. So I think it's important, as developers are doing it, and clearly it's got to make sense to be able to get the deal done. But that's been a lot of my experiences as I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And it is going to serve that much needed population. In the end, it just isn't getting it done because of those other sources of funding.
Yeah, so that's why we had to use the condo structure, because it's a 100% tax credit building. We had to go to the state agency first, to California Tax Credit and Allocation Committee, and make sure they would approve it. But that's how we did it, because that property has tons of sources of funding. We have funding from the city that requires us to fill on one side of the property 20% of the units with formerly homeless. And so we've got folks from 20% to 120% in the same community. But in order to make that happen, and we used a lot of sources, we've got 2 land leases, half the properties on Port Authority property, half on city property. It's very complicated. But we did those carve-outs to ensure that we could maintain it as affordable, because otherwise with tax credits, you'd have to always use the next available unit rule, and you would never be able to preserve the units for those middle income levels.
Does that tie into, we were talking to, I was looking at my notes about needing deeply skewed tax credits too to help out in some markets. Would that apply in this situation?
So that isn't necessarily the problem that we have. We need subsidy with the deeply skewed tax credit units, because the reality is that it's not enough money to maintain the properties into the future if you don't also have subsidy, but you're serving people at 10, 15, 20, 30% of AMI. Those rents will not pay the bills. So we have subsidy in those cases.
Yes. And kind of one final thought on this is, we always think about, oh, people in California make so much money. And you said, yeah, but look at our state income tax there. So
yeah, it's brutal. We pay a ton of taxes, and they're mostly for good causes. But pay a ton of taxes.
I hope you have good roads. Like, I wish our roads were.
Well, I mean, some of them are good and some not so good. But the truth is I don't have to drive that much. I do walk almost everywhere I go during the day. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, the state income tax is extraordinarily expensive. But then also, the reason that the rents are high in my city is it's all about supply. It's because there is not enough housing for the volume of people there. So other cities can get ahead of that. They can learn the lesson from cities like San Francisco or New York, and have better planning to ensure that affordable housing can be built and that density is adequate for your communities.
Oh, I heard somebody. She must have said it. Somebody in the back, you like drink, Sarah. So, okay, I see you, Sarah Henson.
I feel like one of the other things they may learn is that if they were to build a low income, I'm trying not to make y'all drink again.
Dude, there's still drinks up here.
If they would not all focus on building high A+ luxury properties that struggle to fill, so it doesn't really matter how much rent they're going to get per square foot, right? So they struggle to keep those full. If they could just step back a little bit and maybe do some low-income housing, affordable credits.
So we're gonna hold that thought. I'm gonna let E say something that's gonna tie nicely to our next topic.
So when I made my funny, which I didn't have the microphone, I was thinking when you were talking about maybe these other big cities where people are migrating to could learn a lesson from San Francisco and what you said about, there's just not enough supply to meet the volume of people. And then those of us in Texas right now that are experiencing the surge of supply, we're like, okay, we're learning that lesson. And then you said, let's add more. I'm like, let's just hold that for a thought for a second. Let's get past that and to begin with. So, yeah. And then what you said, Rue, coming back to that about, you're right. But as long as we have 46% of new construction cost is going to fees, right? From new construction and regulation, this brings this whole full circle back around again. Because you want to build affordable housing and help us increase that supply, help us pencil the deals, get out of our way.
Right, for sure. So that, again, is a very nice segue because I know, if you can't tell, Cecilia is very passionate about this. And I love that she has such a passion for this industry. So in our remaining time, I'm going to let her take us to church. So she's going to talk about tax credit deals. And I think she really has some very interesting thoughts on how you pencil these deals and what counts. If you think about how you get points in a tax credit deal, Cecilia thinking about, who she's housing and what their needs truly are. I love your suggestion that you're like, they don't really need quartz countertops. They need some other things.
They don't need quartz countertops. They need desks. They need beds. A kid needs to be able to come home and know what it is to sit at a table. And, when I've been in these rooms and I've listened and I'm like, okay, but why can't we just build a dining room area where a table actually comes down and a kid can use it to actually eat or do their homework? Why can't we build those boxes in the bedrooms? Guys, I know it's simple for me to say, why can't we? But why can't we? Why can't those count as points? Why not? Who needs quartz countertops when they can barely buy groceries or are struggling to pay rent or don't have internet for their children to do their work at school? I mean, to do their work at home. See, that's too many drinks there. But seriously, to me, it's where's our thought process here? While I understand there's a value side to what these, assets end up selling for and all that stuff, I get that side of it. But if we're going to do and consider these applications, why not make it where it really is made for the person that it's intended to be in that unit? Those kids. again, we get on the phone and I start talking. I'm like, sorry, guys. I know, my staff knows how passionate I get about these things, but we are here to serve these children and serve these families. And when you walk into a house and they're sitting down eating on the floor, not because mom don't care, but because she can't afford a dining room table. Or the mattresses are on the floor, not because mom don't care, but because she can't afford bedroom furniture. Wouldn't a developer? I know I would. I'd rather get points for building frames in the bedrooms and dressers in the closets than quartz countertops. Just my thought there on that one.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that ties into the kind of the other thing that we've had too is advocacy, getting involved with your local associations. I think that's the only way to change things. To be honest, you have to be willing to speak up and you have to be talking to the right people. So I think anything you can do, the organizations that we had here this morning, whether it's NAA, MHC, NAMA, they all do wonderful work on behalf of all of you, on behalf of this industry, and really trying to help steer legislation and regulatory policy into what benefits us and making sure that, people aren't doing harm through the legislation as best that they can.
Can I add something there?
Of course you can.
That comes with your site teams understanding the value they bring as an individual to that asset, right? Like we can teach them, collect your money. That's all great. Teach them what that NOI number does to the value of that asset, but also teach them how much value they bring as a multifamily manager running a multi-million-dollar business, many of them without degrees. They know how to work these business plans. Put somebody on that property, on that affordable property that works downtown Dallas, and see how they run it. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody who works downtown Dallas, okay? So please don't misconstrue that. But it takes a special person to run these assets.
Mm-hmm.
Show them how valuable they are. As corporate team members, there's a reason I asked that. We have a responsibility to our site teams to show them how great they are and have them live that out there every day. So that's my soapbox.
I told you we were going to church. So, well, I love that. And one of the other things that we talk about too that we're passionate about, and I'll let Rue speak to this because I know she has such a heart for this, is back to those organizations. They have scholarships for people that live in these properties too. And particularly, I know near to her heart is the NAMA Education Foundation. So I'll let you do a shameless plug for that.
Shameless plug for NAMA because they are a fantastic advocate for affordable housing owners and agents, right? And look, guys, we're the ones that are being vilified right now, right? And we know we're not villains. So that's kind of where my soapbox goes. But they do a great job of advocating, and they also have a scholarship foundation that I actually have the honor of sitting on the board for, and we award scholarships to children or adults, right? If you're an adult and you're trying to go to school, we'll still award a scholarship. So everybody deserves the right to an education. Mm-hmm. Everybody does. And so there's so many good things out there that we can do in affordable housing.
Yep. All right. With that, she said it. E is keeping. I think E is like tallying up the number of times that we've said affordable.
I see Charles writing, but I don't know if he's like doing.
Charles might be writing it too. All right. Well, cheers, everyone. Well, all right. So we are at the end of our time. So I appreciate you all being here. I know it's the last session of the last day. So that is awesome. And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Cecilia, again. I love hearing the insights to different perspectives, to different parts of the country, but same heart and passion for affordable. And so I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything you guys do. If you want to stay in touch and hear about what all we're doing, please feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. And I'm trying to remember what else. There's a party tonight. I don't know.
And for those of you who are worried about the weather, the party is not outside. Just because we showed a picture of the stadium, it is not outside. It's indoors. So
it is. Look, that's like the view from inside.
Stay dry. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. It is casual tonight. So our dress up night was last night. This is casual. It's fun. Be prepared to dance. We have a great band, lots of great food. So we hope to see you there. And again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you later.
Roy is open for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Y'all were awesome.
Yeah, thank you.